Hey, what's going on, everybody? Dr. Nathan Thompson here with Exemplify Health Center, a Wellness Way affiliate right here in Yorkville, Illinois. Hope you guys are having an awesome Tuesday. It is now the second half of our day, afternoon. So I appreciate you guys joining us. And I also appreciate all of the awesome questions. So we've gotten some amazing questions that we're going to be going over today. They're going to cover a wide range of different health conditions and things like that. So hopefully today you guys find value in what we're going to be covering. And also make sure that you watch this to the very end, because for those of you who stick around to the very end, I have a very special gift for you. So just as a thank you for liking our page, for sharing our information. And so at the end, a very important time-sensitive giveaway that we're going to be giving to all of you. So guys, when I go over any of these questions and you know someone who might be suffering with a condition or something that in regards to the question that people ask, make sure that in the comments you tag them so that they can go back and they can watch this as well. And at any time during this, make sure that you share this with other people, because this is how we start to change healthcare as we know it. So guys, again, I appreciate all the questions. Here's what I'm going to go over for you today is we had someone ask the question, what supplements do I need to start taking in regards to building my immune system? So I'm going to cover that question in a little bit of detail. Next question is when should an infant get adjusted? Another woman asked, as a woman approaches menopause, what should be some considerations in regards to hormones and weight loss and things like that? We're going to talk about saltwater pools versus chlorine pools, and I'm going to show you an interesting graphic as far as chlorine and bromine and how that actually relates to thyroid health. I'm going to talk about birth control and your skin. Kidney stones, which is a huge thing for a lot of people. I'm going to show where you need to actually be looking at when it comes to kidney stones, and also someone suffering with poor sleep. They're only sleeping a couple hours every single night. What can you do in order to get more restful sleep and a better quality of sleep? And guys, if we have any other questions, make sure that you put these right in the comments below. I'll do my best at the end after we cover all of these different topics and see if we have a little bit of extra time to make sure that we're covering any additional questions that you have. So again, make sure you guys, you give me a thumbs up. Make sure that you share this as well. Make sure if you know someone who's suffering with any of these topics, make sure that you tag them in the comments so they can go back and rewatch. And also let me know where you guys are watching from. So we love to see people watching from all over the country, from California, from Washington, from Minnesota, from the great state of Illinois, for the most part, from Florida, North Carolina, Missouri, Texas. We have people who are watching all over, and I love to see where you guys are actually from. So I'm a little bit of a geography nerd, if you will. So let's talk about one of the first things, the questions that he had. And I think this is actually a really important question, and I think all of us need to be asking this question. This is what I love when people start asking these types of questions. So you guys notice with this whole narrative, and I refuse to give the virus a name, but with this whole narrative that's going on, everyone is talking about, how do I avoid a virus? And really what they're talking about is, how do I decrease my viral load? And I want you guys to know something, is that viruses, bacteria, fungus, everything, they are all around us. They are all around us. We actually need them in order to be able to survive. We need these specific things. And so the only time that they pose any kind of problem is when our immune system gets compromised. So everyone's asking the question, well, what do I need to do to stay inside? What's the best type of mask that I need to be wearing? How do I make sure that I am properly socially distancing? By the way, here's something that's absolutely ridiculous. Is if social distancing was so scientific, we would have a specific scientific consensus as far as how far away you should be staying from people. But here's what I find interesting, is that in the United States it's 6 feet, but in Europe it's 2 meters, which is about, I don't know, 6 feet and 7 inches. So who's right and who is more safe? If you add 7 more inches, does it make you a little bit more safe? So the narrative today is all about how do I decrease my viral load? And really, this question that was posed is helping people to start in the right direction. And one of the things that they say is, hey, what can I do in order to improve my immune system? Meaning that it doesn't matter about the viral load. What can I do to make sure my immune system can handle it? Okay. So a really good question to be able to start. Now, a lot of people will say, well, what is it, Dr. Nate? Is it vitamin D? Is it astragalus? Is it echinacea? Is it elderberry? Is it medicinal mushrooms? What is it? What can I do in order to improve my immune system? Well, the thing is that all of those different things can actually help to improve immune system function. But before we even talk about supplements, let's talk about what you can do without spending a dime. One of the things that you can do is you can make sure that you're sleeping enough. All right. Sometimes you just got to get back to basics. So guys, make sure you're sleeping at least 7 hours a night. Women, make sure you're sleeping 8 to 9. In fact, some people, we tell them based off their testing, you should be sleeping 10, you should be sleeping 11 hours. So make sure that you're getting enough sleep. Number 2, make sure that you are properly breathing. All right, make sure that you are properly breathing. Here's one of the things that is absolutely ridiculous when it comes to masks. And sorry if I'm going to be ranting a little bit, but I want you to know something is that when you are in fight or flight, you're going to notice that you do very shallow mouth breathing. And that will actually cause stress, okay? So that stress perpetuates stress, which perpetuates a low immune system response. And how can you get proper oxygenation when you're breathing in your own carbon dioxide when you're wearing a mask? So you can actually start working on doing some deep breathing. So breathing through the nose, holding it, and then quickly exhaling through the mouth. And just work on doing that and controlling your breathing. Do that for 5 minutes every single day. And you're going to see that it's going to help take you out of that fight or flight response. Again, has nothing to do with immunity as much as it has to do with just improving function inside the body. The other thing is I always tell people, get adjusted. So getting adjusted actually takes people out of fight or flight and puts them into rest and digest and helping the immune system be able to respond sufficiently. Those are things that you don't have to take. But when people say, well, what do I need to take in order to improve my immune system? Is it vitamin C? Is it echinacea? Is it vitamin D, medicinal mushrooms? Is it astragalus? Is it wormwood? Is it licorice? And the reality is that all of those things in some level can improve your immune system. But here's the thing. It depends on actual testing, okay? So it depends on testing. Now, can you actually test the immune system? The answer is absolutely yes. I'm going to show you an example of a test. I'm going to show you a guy who was not having a proper immune system response and why he was suffering from chronic infections all the time. But one of the things I want to show you is I want to actually show you this graphic right here, okay? Let me see if I can take this off. And what this is this is actually how the body makes different immune system cells, okay? So this is how things start from the grandfather of all the cells, which is considered the stem cell up here, and how they then, off of those stem cells, they differentiate into all of these specific type of immune system response cells, and they all serve a different purpose. Excuse me. So I would actually tell people is like, if you need to just make more cells in general, then you need to work on actual stem cell production. So if you need to work on stem cell production, a great one is actually would be considered astragalus, because improving and increasing stem cells means that you have the capacity to make all white blood cells in general. And so if you have looked at the news or you look at natural health or whatever, everybody is talking about, injecting stem cells or doing, stem cell type therapy and things like that. And I'm certainly not opposed to it. But the first thing you need to make sure, if you even consider doing it, is if your immune system can even support stem cells, and also to make sure that your body isn't so dysfunctional that it can't even be able to allow those stem cells to be able to mature and be able to differentiate. So if you just need overall better immune system function, this is why astragalus is actually so cool. In fact, I want to show you an actual awesome article. This comes from PubMed. And by the way, when people say, where'd you get that from? Google? Absolutely. So you can actually go and Google PubMed, which is all of the referenced peer-reviewed journals from all different health journals, and they're all archived onto PubMed. And so here's what's interesting is this comes from PubMed, which is the United States National Library of Medicine, the National Institute of Health. And they talk about astragalus, talking about the anti-aging implications of astragalus. So, and they talk about all the different functions of astragalus and how it affects things like the immunomodulatory effects of astragalus. They talk about the anti-aging effect of astragalus. They talk about anti-vascular disease of astragalus, the anti-neurodegeneration of astragalus, and they talk about all the benefits of astragalus. Now, here's the problem. So let me show you this on the screen. The problem is when you look at research, one of the things that when they look at research, they say, well, does astragalus help this condition? And the problem is that really when it comes to supplements and things like that, there are no supplements that can treat a specific condition, because all they do is they give sufficiency to the cell so that they have the raw materials to be able to work normally. So the problem is that when you look at drugs and you look at that, they say, does this drug improve this? And they design a drug to specifically start to manipulate enzymes, or they start to manipulate physiological. There we go. And so that way they can say, okay, well, this is a treatment for this specific condition. But when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to stress, when it comes to all those different things, the big picture is, guys, is that you need to be giving the body sufficiency. You need to give it the right nutrition. You need to make sure that the body is non-stressed. You make sure it needs to make sure that the body is not inflammatory. And so when you start doing that, then yes, you start seeing that the body has the capacity and actually has the ability to be able to heal. One of the things that I want to show you, though, is, we have people who come in and they take literally dozens and dozens and dozens of different supplements, and they're saying, I don't know if this works or not, but I'm just taking everything. Well, what if you could actually test and look and see if you are deficient in specific types of cells, specifically immune system cells inside of the body? What if we could actually take people who were immunocompromised? Maybe the elderly is immunocompromised. Maybe, and listen, when we were saying people have underlying conditions when it comes to quote unquote this virus, the underlying conditions are not diabetes or high blood pressure. That's not causing any of the illness. It's that if someone does have diabetes, does have high blood pressure, or they're elderly, chances are is that due to long-term stress and long-term deficiencies, that will cause a lowering of the immune system response, because it just can't manufacture the different types of white blood cells that are needed in order to handle whether it's a bacterial infection, a viral infection, a yeast infection, or some other kind of infection that's taking place inside the body. So to answer that question, what supplements should I take? Really, what it comes down to is it's going to come down to it actually depends. Okay, so it's going to depend. So I want to show you this one right here. And this is actually coming from our immune system panel. Okay, so how many of you guys, if you guys have actually gotten a Wellness Way immune system panel, give me a thumbs up, because this right here will tell you exactly how your body is able to handle any kind of bacterial load or any kind of viral load. Let me give you a little bit of background about this gentleman who came in. So this gentleman has been dealing with problems with infections over the last, I want to say 9 or 10 months. And so obviously this guy eats great, and he is actually very much into natural health. And so initially we tested some foods. We tested some stool because he was also having some problems with eczema as well. Couldn't figure out why that was. So we started working on his working on food allergies, started working on the stool. What was amazing is his eczema actually cleared up. So skin cleared up completely. And he's like, I just feel like I can't get over some of these infections. Like I always feel like I'm dealing with a viral infection. So then at that point, we did 2 more tests. We actually tested for mold, and he was off the charts in mold. Lo and behold, he ended up, having a toxic exposure to black mold probably about a year ago. And just things started to go downhill, including his immune system response. So this is actually the Wellness Way immune system panel, okay? So when you actually look at his and you look at the types of cells that he is actually creating, one of the things that you see that is low is this number right down here, which is his percentage of CD8 lymphocytes. The CD8 lymphocytes are basically the cells that are responsible for having a sniper-like focus on destroying cells that are infected with a bacteria or specifically a virus, but they are also the ones that go out and hunt for cancer cells. Now, if you want to talk about your ability to be able to adapt to a viral type infection, then this test is the one that you want to be looking for. But when you look at his test and you see that his CD8 cells are so low, basically what you're saying is that it doesn't matter how much you want to try to avoid a virus, is that he can't bring about a sufficient immune system response to be able to go out and be able to destroy cells that are virally infected or cells that have actually turned cancerous. So is this person considered immunocompromised? Yes. Now the next thing is now we need to figure out, all right, why is this person immunocompromised? And figure that out, because there's a lot of different reasons why people can be immunocompromised. You can be immunocompromised by being stressed. You can be immunocompromised maybe because you're not getting enough sleep. You can be immunocompromised because you have an autoimmune condition and you are taking different type of steroids treatments that are actually lowering the immune system response, that is making you immune system compromised. You may have cancer. That is a sign that you are immunocompromised. You may have undergone the treatment of cancer with chemotherapy. This is why they do a general white blood cell count every single time, because they know that chemotherapy will actually cause damage to the white blood cells and will kill them off. So there's a lot of different reasons why you can be immunocompromised, but in his case, it was actually due to mold. So, and mold will cause terrible immunosuppression. And this is why I think there's a lot of people who have some underlying mold conditions and they just don't know that they do, because some people can't mount an adequate immune system response when there has actually been any kind of mold exposure. Okay. So how do we know what to give them? Well, as far as for his immune system, we need to be working on the cause. So we're working on some things when it comes to mold, but in the meantime, we're also giving some things that are particularly going to help increase his CD8 cell count. So we're giving him some of those things that are a lot more targeted versus blasting him with 19,000 different things, just a few things in order to help bring his immune system up to sufficiency, so that as he starts to get rid of the mold, his immune system can actually start to remove some of the things a little bit more efficiently. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. So before we go to the next question, I want to give a shout out to a couple of people. Jolita, how are you, from Illinois? That's great. Hope you guys are enjoying the extended stay-at-home order. I myself, I'm just watching my hair grow every single day. Michelle from Green Bay, Wisconsin. I hope you're not a Packers fan, but if you are, I would understand. Mitzi, how are you? From Wisconsin again. Christine, how are you? Kristen, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Robin, how are you? And Lexi, hey, thanks for joining us, guys. Now, hey, next one that I want to go over with you is this question. So this is actually kind of a hot topic, right? Because I ask people, I say, would you get your child ever adjusted? Some people say, not in a million years. What are they going to crank in my child's neck and they're going to cause damage? Because I've seen the videos on YouTube and I'm definitely not going to do that. Some people say, absolutely, I swear by it. Like adjusting kids is one of the most amazing things that you can do. Now, what do you think I'm going to say? Because I'm a chiropractor. And so, do you think that I adjusted my kids when they were born? And I did 100%. And in fact, all three of my kids were adjusted. One was adjusted at about 8 hours, another one was about 12, and the next one was at about 24 hours. So I adjusted all of them within 24 hours. Now, here's the thing. It's not that you are going to, it's not that necessarily we're adjusting them, but what we're doing is we're actually checking them for any kind of issues specifically in through the upper part of the neck. Now, guys, let me ask you a question. If you guys have ever seen what doctors would consider a normal birth, you would say that it is extremely traumatic. If you see how women give birth today, anatomically doesn't make sense because what they do is they prop up a woman's legs in which now the baby has to go up and against gravity in order to come out. And wouldn't it make a lot more sense for the woman to just squat down and for the baby to just come out using gravity and be able to just corkscrew right out? That's how we used to do it, actually. But for some reason now, we think that we have to prop a woman's legs up and change the angle of the pelvis so that the baby has to come out. And of course, it's going to have a harder time. So I want you to think about this. When you look at a baby doesn't have any voluntary motor control of their neck, which is why they come out and their neck is all like this. So they have no ability to be able to move their neck. They have no ability to be able to brace their neck. And so basically, if a doctor is coming and applying an axial traction and turning the head, there's nothing that the body can do to try to counteract that. So you know that if someone's coming at you and you know that you're going to take a hit, you have the ability to be able to brace everything inside of your body so it can set up some damage upper cervically to the baby, whether it's a natural birth, whether it's a forceps delivery, whether it's a C-section, whether it's a vacuum extraction. All of that can cause some level of trauma. So all three of my kids, we checked them. So we actually checked their posture first. And then we applied a very light adjustment, a very light stimulus. In fact, most kids we actually use some kind of machine assisted that just starts to push and starts to guide those vertebrae so that it's able to flex and extend and move the way that it's supposed to. And so all three of my kids, I've adjusted hundreds and hundreds of kids right after birth. I've been in the hospitals to adjust kids. I've gone into the neonatal unit to be able to adjust kids. I remember one time there was a baby who was born prematurely, was in there for 3 months. A woman reached out to me. She says, can you please help? My baby won't latch on, will not feed. She's crying. Can you do something? They won't let me go home until the baby will actually feed. So I went into the neonatal unit and basically adjusted that baby. I said, the baby's just going to be just fine. And then immediately the baby latched on, started to feed, and they were able to go home the very next morning. So it is important for children to have a properly functioning nerve system. And here's one of the reasons why. So I want to show you this. All right, guys, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me or not? All right, guys, can you guys hear me? All right, you can hear me now, correct? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up or say I can hear you. All right, good. So apparently we lost our sound. So technology, I love it when it works 60% of the time. Okay, so hey, as I was saying, I want to show you this, is that I was saying here, and hopefully maybe switching screens sometimes I lose some of the sound. But what we do is when you can correct what's happening in the upper part of the neck and allow the system to be able to go back to normal, then what happens is that it will help the baby to be able to digest food. So what is colic? Colic usually is just the baby is in a sympathetic state and they're not digesting their food, and then it allows them to be very uncomfortable and very gassy. So why do you think when kids get adjusted, they immediately start digesting better, they become more calm and relaxed? Because we're putting them into a more of a parasympathetic response versus a sympathetic. So should you get your babies adjusted? If they have problems, yes. Should your babies all of them get checked? 100%, absolutely. And when should you do it? As quickly as possible after birth, all right? So I want to go over the next question too. So we have a couple more questions to go over. So we have Leslie who's submitted a question. She says, a woman approaches menopause. How will these changes affect weight loss? And how does one stay on top of these things as her body changes, okay? So here's the thing, when a woman goes into menopause, basically they're going to still be making some estrogens and testosterone and progesterone and things like that. But the biggest thing when it comes to menopause is that it's no longer dependent on the ovaries. So the production of those hormones are actually going to be now on the adrenal glands. And so you're going to still have those hormones, but you're going to have them in a lot lower amount. So the biggest thing when it comes to weight loss for a woman as she approaches menopause is that I actually think it's easier. So I always say that when a woman is cycling, so she's having her menstrual cycle, really there's only about a 2-week window out of the month to actually be able to lose weight. And this is why in clinical experience, why we usually see that men and women, especially women who are cycling and men even of the same age, why women lose the weight about half as fast as men. So actually, when you look at things hormonally, really what it comes down to is about 2 weeks out of the cycle, would you actually say, yeah, you can actively try to lose weight, but the other 2 weeks, we don't even recommend it. And just remember this, is for a woman, your body wants to be fertile. And so in order to be fertile, one of the things is that a woman needs a little bit more body fat in order to help fertility. So how does that change when you reach menopause? Well, when you reach menopause, it actually becomes easier because your ability to lose weight now is not dependent on your menstrual cycle. So one of the biggest things that you need to do, though, is that as you go into menopause, one of the things you have to make sure is you have to make sure that the liver is working the way that it's supposed to, that liver pathways are working the way they're supposed to, the gallbladder is working the way that it's supposed to, and that the adrenal glands are not stressed, okay? And so that's why menopausal women, how we talk about why adrenal health is so important, because that's where actually those hormones are getting manufactured. So as you go into menopause, one of the best things that you can actually do is you can actually get a Dutch test. And that Dutch test will measure all of these pathways and see how well these pathways are actually working, okay? So you can see on this Dutch test, so this is someone who is menopausal, but you can see how deficient in all of these different hormones when it comes to testosterone, estradiol, the different estrogen derivatives as they get metabolized. You can see a lot of them are getting methylated, removed by the liver. So getting a Dutch test is one of the great things to see as far as how those pathways are working. And it's actually really good as far as those pathways are working when it comes to weight loss for women. It's also great in order to see how women are having problems with menopause type symptoms or hot flashes. But this is also a great test that I believe every young girl, if she goes into puberty, you should get some kind of baseline for these tests in order to see how these pathways are actually working. And it's actually a great test to get every single month, right? So it changes a little bit, but it actually becomes easier for women because now they don't have to exercise or quote unquote diet or eat differently according to the actual menstrual cycle. So I know Kristen, if you're watching, I picked this just for you. She said, is saltwater pool a better option than chlorine? My answer to that is yes, 100%. And I'm actually going to show you something on here as far as why that is, okay? So a saltwater pool, and in fact, I've looked into this a little bit. The saltwater pool can be kind of expensive if you're actually getting it properly converted. So some people, like, I guess, don't quote me, that they say, yeah, it's not an issue to convert from chlorine into a saltwater type pool. So some say it's not that bad of a transition, but you talk to other pool people and they say, yeah, it's kind of a big process to transition if you're truly getting a saltwater type pool. But in the long run, it apparently is a little bit easier to be able to maintain it. Now, can chlorine be bad? Absolutely. So chlorine is caustic to the skin. Chlorine, I mean, you open your eyes under water, it burns your eyes. So it burns the mucous membranes. But here's the thing is chlorine can interfere with your thyroid function. This is why if you look over here, you can see all of these different halides, or what they're called. Now, if you look down here, you look at iodine, okay? So iodine is needed in order to produce thyroid hormone. So you need iodine. And so you can have your iodine from sources like sea salt, seafood, kelp, things like that will have some iodine in it. Now, you don't need a lot of iodine in order to be able to produce adequate thyroid. And in fact, all the people that we tested when it comes to thyroid function, I've only had one person who was truly an iodine deficiency. So if that makes sense, most of the time we are looking at that thyroid function is being decimated by an infection somewhere else, or by some kind of viral issue, immune system deficiency, or even some kind of having estrogen issues that can block the conversion of specific thyroid hormones. So when you look at this, though, there's some certain things that are going to compete for these iodine binding sites within your thyroid. So if you look at these are all in the same periodic table. I'm probably going to give you nightmares because we're talking about chemistry, because I hated chemistry so much in high school and in college and post-grad. I took so much chemistry. I can't believe I came out alive. But now I understand why you needed it. So if you look at fluoride, this is why we say, hey, any kind of fluoride you want to avoid because it's going to compete with iodine. So toothpaste, antidepressants are fluoridated, antibiotics are fluoridated, and acids are fluoridated. Then you have chlorine, which is in drinking water and swimming pools. So even the fact that I would say that it would be better to have a chlorinated swimming pool than it would to have a chlorinated hot tub. Because I want you to think about it. If you increase the temperature of the water, you're going to open up your pores a lot more and allow more things to be able to come in. So chlorine can also compete with binding sites for iodine. And then there's another one that's probably, we actually call it the bully of the halides, because it's probably the one that competes the most. And this is called bromine. So if you look at your breads, brominated flour, soft drinks will contain bromine. Mountain Dew contains bromine. Medications will contain bromine. Flame retardants will also contain bromine. So you guys can see in your everyday life, you're exposed to these things almost every single day. So does it mean that if you have a thyroid condition, your first thing is that you need to go and change your pool, change all those? I would say before you invest in doing that, make sure that you're working on the big things, especially because there are some things when it comes to thyroid health that are going to be a little bit bigger than just working on changing out your pool water, especially. So great answer, but I'm 100% fan of going to salt water, but it's just the cost that can be involved with switching your pool over when it comes to that. All right. All right. My doctor prescribed birth control for my acne. So we had a patient ask that question and was a little bit confused because she said, why is my doctor prescribing birth control for acne that I have on my face? And I was just as confused as well. So when you look at men and women, so hormone fluctuations can cause changes in the skin. Absolutely, 100%. And in fact, women are going to be a little bit more susceptible to it because because of their hormones, because of estrogens, women's skin and their thickness and things like that are going to be different than a man. So men have a little bit thicker skin, and changes in hormones are definitely not going to affect them as much. But the whole thing behind giving birth control in order to improve your skin, here's the issue, is that skin is a reflection of what is happening on the inside. And if there are hormone fluctuations, if there are issues happening in the gastrointestinal system, if those things are actually happening and it's being reflected in the skin, then don't create another hormone hormone imbalance to correct another hormone imbalance that the body's trying to adapt to because there's some kind of illness or stressor inside the body. So all you're doing for clear skin is you're just propagating more illness, more bad physiology, and more disease. So am I a fan of giving birth control at all? Absolutely not. The reason why is you look at the number of hormone-based cancers that are out there right now. When you look at cervical cancer, breast cancer, uterine cancer, prostate cancer in men, all of those different types of hormone kind of cancers that are very specific to organs that are very sensitive to specific sex hormones, you're seeing that it continues to get obviously worse and worse and worse. So birth control for acne, no. In fact, we said, let's figure out why this is actually happening by actually doing the proper testing. All right. Let's see if I can bring myself up by the self. All right, cool. Kidney stones, guys. So if you have any questions, I see some questions that are actually coming in. I'll make sure that I answer those to the best of my ability. Kidney stones. I want you to share this with someone who has had kidney stones. I've never had kidney stones. I know people that have. Apparently, kidney stones are on par with giving birth, if not worse. In fact, that's the experience that generally people say. So someone asked, "Hey, I just found out. I just was diagnosed and went to the emergency room. I had kidney stones. What on earth can I do? Is it something that I'm eating? What's going on?" Because a lot of times they don't give you any answers as far as why the kidneys are actually producing any kind of stones. In fact, sometimes, doctors will say, well, you need to eat a low oxalate diet, okay? So eat foods that are low in oxalates because those oxalates can actually cause crystallization of calcium and can cause these specific types of stones. Now, listen, most of the time when people are having kidney stones, I want you to know something. They also have some big time digestive issues as well. So I've never seen anyone who hadn't had any had no digestive problems that didn't have kidney stones. It's not to say that they weren't symptomatic, but when we tested them, they had some big time gastrointestinal issues. So I remember that we had a guy who had kidney stones all the time. We're talking about passing a kidney stone 3 to 4 times a year, if you can imagine how exhausting that would be. But we did something probably no one would actually even say, like, why on earth would you look there? We actually looked at his stool, and we looked at some of his stool markers and saw some elevations that were going on that are in fact associated with an elevated risk, a lot higher elevated risk of actually having kidney stones. So once we just started to work on some of the things that we saw in through the stool, in the last 2 years, he hasn't had any. So when you say kidney stones, it may sound a little bit counterproductive that you want to look in the kidneys, but actually where we're looking at is we're looking at the large intestine and seeing actually how the gastrointestinal system is working, right? So those are usually you are having some problems in the gastrointestinal system that's causing that change in physiology and metabolism that's causing a change in kidney function as well. So great question. All right, last question, then I'll answer a couple of more. Someone messaged me and said, Dr. Nate, please help me. I'm only sleeping for 5 to 6 hours a night and I can't sleep any more than that, right? Now, I love this question. Many times people ask me about sleep, and the first question they ask me is to say, what can I take to help me sleep better? Now, just remember this, if you can't sleep, if you can't calm down your mind, or if you're not getting restful sleep, there's a problem that's going on. So that's why this answer is so multifaceted. Number one, if you can fall asleep but you can't stay asleep, I want you to just look at some of these neurotransmitters that are involved with sleep. So if you can fall asleep, can't stay asleep, you got to look at serotonin. Okay. So serotonin is actually the happy hormone, but it also helps you to stay asleep at night. So where's a lot of your serotonin made? It's made in the gastrointestinal system. So if they can fall asleep, can't stay asleep, you're looking at, gosh, there's got to be some kind of gut issue that's going on. Sometimes people are like, I can't go to sleep. I just feel like my mind is racing. Well, that can be an issue with some problems with glutamate production. This can be problems with just mental stress that's going on. So that's a little bit different. So it may also be like there's too much blue light. You're watching too much TV before, and your brain cannot shut down. You cannot be producing melatonin when you're exposed to blue light. It may be mental stress. It may be all of these different things. So there's so many different types of things that it could actually be. But I would actually just start saying this. Number one is shut off the TV, shut off your digital, your phone, shut off those things you're having an issue sleeping, 1 hour at least before. Get some blue light blocking glasses, for the afternoon. If you have to be on the computer, you have to be on the phone to block that out. That will help. Make sure though that you also don't have any issues with glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity. Because sometimes when people start to eat better and they start decreasing their sugar, they have a hard time falling asleep at night because they can't regulate their blood sugar, and they get all kinds of cortisol that gets dumped inside of their body. And when that happens, when you dump all of that inside of the body, then it's going to raise that blood sugar. It's going to raise your energy back up, which is why when a lot of people, when they're doing no sugar May, for example, they're like, gosh, I'm having a hard time falling asleep. Well, that's a problem with insulin sensitivity and sugar metabolism, is because your blood sugar goes low and you can't regulate it, and your body dumps a bunch of cortisol in order to try to get that blood sugar back up. So it can be a lot of different reasons, obviously, why, but I would actually say this: if you have mental stress, California poppy is going to be king. So I take California poppy, and in fact, I'll actually show it to you. So I'd be lying to you to say that I don't have any stress right now. Of course I have stress. So we are locked down. We are in quarantine almost. I have a gym that I own as well that hasn't been able to open for about 7 weeks. So yeah, despite that, these are times that it's going to call for California poppy. And what it does is it's basically like a glass of wine without the sugar, without the alcohol, but it has that same sedative type effect, and it helps to calm the mind actually. So hopefully that helps out. All right. So hopefully that helps out. So there are things that are in your control, but when in doubt, taking things like California poppy, some people sometimes we recommend kava, sometimes CBD oil. It just depends on what some of their issues actually are. So guys, thanks again for all of your questions, and I'll answer just a couple of more. And I apologize for the mic being off for just a little bit. So what would someone with alopecia want to test first, foods or stool? Well, alopecia, Michelle, is going to be basically an autoimmune type condition. So what you want to do with alopecia is you want to first figure out all the different triggers that can be triggering the immune system to let the immune system settle down. So I like the fact that you said, would you test foods? Yes. And would you test stool? Absolutely. Those are probably the first two things that I actually would test. Maybe even test, do an autoimmune panel to see if there's any other underlying autoimmune conditions that are taking place as well. So that's a great question. All right. The difference between the Dutch test and the women's hormone test. Let's see if I can actually bring this up for you. So what's the difference between the Dutch test and the women's hormone test? I think what you're asking is the blood panel versus the Dutch. So the Dutch test is urinalysis. So it's looking at metabolized hormones that are ending up through the kidneys. And just a regular women's hormone test is those that are immediately available within the blood. So sometimes we'll do both of them together, especially when it comes to fertility issues and things like that. But one is measuring immediately available in the blood, and one is measuring metabolized in the urine. And I like the Dutch test. The only problem is sometimes we don't do that first because the Dutch test can take a little bit longer to get in because you have to measure it around a woman's menstrual cycle. But if you are, postmenopausal, you can actually get this test from at any time. So that's not really very time dependent. All right. So guys, thank you very much for joining us. Apologize for going a little bit long, but I love talking sometimes. So I hope you guys have a great Tuesday. If you have any other questions, let us know. You can send us a message. And one last thing too, is that coming up on Saturday, I will drop the link in the description of this live, is coming up on Saturday. We are going to, see if I can bring this down. We are going to be doing our roadblocks to weight loss webinar, Saturday, 9 a.m. I'll put the link in the description of this live. Anybody can join us on this webinar, but we're going to go over the biggest roadblocks to weight loss and how weight loss is so much more beyond calories in and calories out. And also, what we're going to go over is how to design a nutrition plan that produces health, and that weight loss is not the goal, but instead weight loss is actually the side effect. So pay attention and go back up in this link in a couple of minutes, and I'll leave the link to this actual webinar that you can register for free for. And then, guys, I don't want to forget this. We have a giveaway for you. So if you are watching this at the end, we want to just say thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for asking questions. We want to give you a giveaway right now. So if you go to T28challenge.com, you're going to see, which is our 28-day program, which, guys, there is so much content in there. My ebook is in there. We have videos on working out, recipe books, workout books, you name it, all of that stuff, videos. It is actually incredible. And in fact, one of the reasons why I wrote the T28 book was that it wasn't a protocol. It was just for 28 days helping people to develop two main healthy habits, getting them to help to work out correctly and working out with the right intensity, number one, and number two, also helping them to be able to get off of sugar, which every single person, I'm going to guarantee you, is consuming too much of. So if you guys go in and you buy it, enter the promo code EHC, Exemplify Health Center, EHC, and then what we will do is, normally I think it's $97, and it will take off 100% of that so that you get the entire access to all of those resources for free, I believe, over the next 60 days. So you'll have free access to that. So you'll be able to download all of that stuff, watch all of that stuff. And in fact, actually, my book is on audiobook, and you can listen to the audiobook as well. So that will end on Friday, May 15th. That's when that coupon code will expire. So again, you can go ahead and put in EHC. It will take 100% discount off of that. And that is my gift from me to you. And guys, make sure that you share this too, because the people that you know, that you love, that you know need help, they can also use this this coupon code. So there's no expiring as far as how many can be used. It will expire on Friday, May 15th. Okay. So make sure that you share this with other people so that they can enjoy this gift. All right. So guys, I appreciate you guys joining me for this. Hope you had as good a time as I did, and be well. And if you have any other topics that you want to discuss a little bit further down the road, just let me know, and I'd be happy to help you as best as I can. All right. Be well, guys. We'll see you soon.